Yes, it's the Daily Objective. Jonathan Hoenig from CapitalistPig.com, along with Nikos from the Ayn Rand Center, the Ayn Rand Institute, scholar, a student of objectivism, as we all are, and we're happy to have you with us today. We talk some heavy and hard themes here on the Daily Objective. We also talk some, as they say, kind of more ripped from the headlines, social and cultural discussions as well. A lot of them born from our interaction with you, our listeners, our subscribers, and our donors. We want to encourage you always to help us, as they say, keep the lights on, keep the discussion flowing by hitting that super chat and, of course, becoming a subscriber to the Ayn Rand Center, so we can bring you not only exciting presentations that are online, but also in person as well. And Nikos, I know you'll tell us a little bit about something that's coming up later in the show. But let's kick it off with kind of today's topic, which is MMA, mixed martial arts. Been in quite the news these days. I mean, this is something that was really on the fringes even 10 or 15 years ago. It is mainstream now, and still a lot of debate about its kind of positive and negative and benefits. So we kind of got into it, I guess, a couple of weeks ago. You had expressed some, I believe that you thought it was the most, quote, objectivist sport. I think that was your claim. I said I thought it was horrific. I would never be so bold as to say anti-objectivist. I would just say anti-man. I would think it's vile. And I think today will be a pretty healthy debate about that. And I believe if I win the debate, you'll probably come after me and kick my ass, knowing what I know about you and MMA. But you start and tell us why MMA is good and, in your opinion, the most objectivist sport.
The most objective sport, I said, is basketball. So, but I express my support for MMA. So here is my case. The first thing to notice is that MMA is one of the most demanding sports in terms of the skills included. So if you're someone who is an admirer of skills, who is an admirer at human beings putting the effort and the skills in a top level, then you should appreciate MMA. So what particularly am I mentioning? So think about it this way. Even doing something like boxing is something which is very, very demanding. You need to have the stamina, you need to have the pain tolerance, and you need to have the skill of avoiding and all that stuff just to do boxing. Now imagine that you are in that stage and you not only have to know boxing, you have to know grappling, which means fighting, standing basically with someone. You need to know jiu-jitsu, which is fighting mostly on the ground. You need to be aware of avoiding kicks. You need to be aware of avoiding things like elbows. So imagine how much skill it would be to be able to play at the same time basketball, football, and volleyball in one sport. So mixed martial arts is something like that. So that's the first thing. There is something admirable to these people to begin with. That's one point. A second point is that the technical detail that it involves, particularly in the battle on the ground, is something which is very, very interesting. So you can even be, let's say, a geek for understanding tactics, for understanding the movements, and you can enjoy this. And let me say something here. Most of the people I know who like MMA don't like to see people being, what we call ground and pound, don't like the blood, don't like the injuries, which are part of the game, and don't like all
I'm sorry,
rules.
Nikos, my earphone was missed there. It's called what again? What did you say?
Ground and pound.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Continue.
And the third thing that I think is important in MMA is it has inspired many young people to start martial arts, particularly Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Because when we talk about mixed martial arts, mostly we talk about UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Champion. It started in '93 in the United States, and it was the showcase for the efficiency of Jiu-Jitsu. We had Royce Gracie, who was not the biggest, but he managed to beat everyone else. So the fact that this can inspire the skinny kid, the kid that who has been subject to bullying, to find a way to stand up for themselves, I think this is something which is good. And mostly you will find that in martial arts schools, you don't find the bullies. You mostly find kids who want to stand up for themselves and find a way to gain more self-confidence and protect their values and protect their dignity and protect their bodily integrity. So this is why I am in favor of mixed martial arts, and I think that it can be something which is of value.
Okay, I'll take that, and I think you argue your case. And I want to thank also Mikhail Sanders, who for the super chat, who says MMA is more cerebral than boxing, more reality oriented. Who are each of your favorite MMA fighters? Do you feel that Conor McGregor could become an objectivist if you had a long enough sit down with him? Nikos, I'll let you hit. That was a response to your presentation. I'll let you answer that, and then I want to give my rebuttal if I could.
Yeah, so that's not going to make me necessarily very popular. I think Khabib is my favorite fighter. Why? Because despite the mysticism, he comes across to me as respectful, as someone who is committed mostly to the game, as someone who his whole life is based on this one very purpose, which is to be good at what he's doing. And the fact that he's undefeated is also very, very good. On whether McGregor would be an objectivist, I have no idea, but I would be a liar if I told you that I haven't enjoyed his flamboyance and his extravagant persona before he went down the dark path before the fight with Khabib. But that's another topic. But thank you so much for your contribution.
Absolutely, and the discussion. I mean, Ayn Rand didn't write about mixed martial arts. We don't know necessarily what she would have thought, but there has been some scholarship, Nikos, within objectivism about sports, and I thought at least I'd start my presentation of why MMA is bad. In fact, I think it's worse than bad, and I'm not calling you, but I think MMA is immoral. I think it's disgusting, and I think it's ultimately anti-life and anti-values. So let's just, for me at least, start with, well, what even is the purpose of sport? And Tara Smith, who I know you know and you work with, I love her. She's written a lot about sports, and she says, and I'm quoting now, at a time in which much of the world around us seems distinctly unadmirable, and when admiration itself is often dismissed as naive, athletic achievements and the qualities that propel them present, palpable, counter evidence to our darkened conclusions. Shining a spotlight on sports display of human beings doing difficult things could pay healthy dividend as admiration fuels inspiration. This is from her article on a pedestal sport. And I just question, to begin with, if MMA, if anyone really can admire those visuals, and I'll support that in the middle. Tom Bowden wrote about this too. He said, look, the essential value of spectator sports lies in their capacity to illustrate the process of human goal achievements. So it's what I'm hearing is people doing impossible things, people, setting goals and achieving them. And Tara, again, on Dr. Peikoff was asked, is there a good reason to like and follow sports? Tara responded, sports at its best exhibits rational passion that's an inspiring reaffirmation of values. A rational passion, something heroic. And well, what are we talking about here? MMA, does that fit the bill? So I did a little research because I don't watch a lot of MMA. This is from sportscasting.com. What's the difference? Well, the biggest difference between the two sports is, quote, in boxing, you can only use punches and you can only hit above the belt. In MMA, almost anything is fair game. All right, this isn't me speaking. The Irish Times explains, quote, boxers can stand with their hands near their head, while MMA fighters cannot do that. So is that right, Nikos? MMA fighters cannot protect their head?
Well, yeah, there's no point because the gloves are small. I have an objection to this, but finish your points and then
all right. We'll go back and forth. Thank you. I won't go on too long. Now, Dr. Peikoff actually addressed this in particular because he was asked in this question, is there a good reason to like and follow sports? And here, I was going to play it, but I'll just summarize it. He said, I'm sure there are fights in which they just try and hurt each other as an end to themselves. And if that does exist, it's immoral. That's what I would describe. That's MMA. It's two men and sometimes women now, which I've seen, which is absolutely disgusting. Two people in a ring and no rules. And the goal is to hurt each other. He is asking about boxing now. Peikoff says the goal of the boxer is not to damage unto oneself. Otherwise, there would not be all the rules we talked about. It's a contest of skill and ability to defend yourself physically with your hands. That's not MMA. To me, MMA is exactly that. It's a fight which the goal is to hurt the other person. So what about health? You know, the objectivist ethics, I know, as you know, Nikos, as our audience knows, we're talking about man's life as the standard of value, right? We want, now it doesn't mean we don't take risks, but our life is the standard of value. And there's a lot of research that shows that MMA is extraordinarily dangerous. In fact, you have a bigger chance of getting injured, 59% of MMA fighters versus 49% of boxers. Here's another study that says, in effect, the general injury rate for MMA is between 22 and 28. It's 17 to 23 for boxing. MMA is consistently showing there's more injuries. The brain risk injury, I mean, what are we if not our brains? That our brain is everything. It's powering us along. 1/3 of professional mixed martial arts matches end in a knockout, which has a higher incidence of brain trauma than boxing. So this is a sport that has a substantially higher risk of brain injury, not even just injury, brain injury. Another study, the longer the pro fighter's career, the more the fighter will lose a critical brain capacity. So basically, the longer you do this, the more brain cells you're going to lose. That's not true with tennis. It's not true with, I mean, I can't think of any other sports, with basketball. And then, of course, you have the really tragic cases, like all these people who died. Here's one from 2012, MMA, an unregulated event, trauma to the head, Michael Kirkham. This is from 2010, bleeding in the brain. This is from 2008 again, cerebral hemorrhage. This is a dangerous activity. This isn't a sport. And then I'll just do aesthetics and then I'll shut up. Ayn Rand talked about liking Muhammad Ali. Look at Muhammad Ali, and you see, even when he was, now that's a punch to the face there. That's pretty violent. I have to say, I don't like that, but that is the sport of boxing, and whoever that fighter was protecting his face. But this was an athlete. This is an athlete. Now let's look at MMA, just for comparison, right? This is what Ayn Rand talked about boxing. And here's what's going on with MMA. And I know you're saying this is the worst of the worst, but there's a lot of these images out there. It's a lot of these, and this is glorified in the MMA world. This is being tough when, you know, this is what's seen as good when you get all this, you know, this is, I mean, I don't have words for it. And you know what it reminds me with? I'll end on this, Nikos. When I see this, it reminds me not of Man Shining, but it reminds me of this. It's like gladiator shit. It's old world, pre-capitalism, pre-rules, Hobbesian, disgusting irrationality. And I think it's bad. I think it's wrong. And I think it's corrupt.
So you made some very good points, Jonathan. So, and I had it actually in my notes that, reflecting on what I said, I thought when I was preparing that, but everything I said could also apply to gladiators. And actually, it's even more skills there. So you also need to be able to avoid the lion or whatever. However, there is a major difference. There are rules. It's not true that there are no rules. So you cannot, for example, eye gouge, at least for UFC. I'm not talking about people who gather behind a bar, which is indeed immoral because the danger is significant. But there is some level of risks in every sport. I've seen more freak injuries in football rather than I've seen in MMA. Of course, there are more people playing football, so the statistic is maybe not very valid. Another thing is, you don't want to hurt the other person as much as possible. You want to submit the other person. So quite often you see an MMA fight ending in a submission, particularly a choke. A choke can put you to sleep, but after 5 seconds you're up, and it's not that bad.
I mean, just quick question.
Yeah.
Quick contrast that versus boxing.
Okay, so
boxing
here's the thing, though.
Points.
Yeah, with boxing, you might get fewer injuries, but the boxing injuries are almost all in the head. And here's the danger with MMA. Actually, with people who try to control MMA, they try to impose rules, and they have imposed rules in the past of things that might make sense to their head, but don't make sense in actually real life, which is always the problem with regulation, the seen and the unseen. Let me give an example. Not allowing bare knuckle fights, because bare knuckle sounds way more brutal. Except that when you're bare knuckle, you're not gonna continually punch someone in the head because you're gonna break your arm.
Whereas with gloves, except for the ground and pound, which is so commonplace that in fact there's a name for it, the ground and pound.
Yeah, it is. But here's again something that I have to make clear. Context matters. Why do you like watching MMA? If you like watching MMA because you like the ground and pound, because you like the blood, and because you can't wait to see someone getting injured, then there's definitely something wrong with your mind, with your premises, and with the way you deal with your life. But if you like the skill, if you like the anticipation, then if you take courage from seeing someone walking to the octagon and you say, look, if this guy can walk in there and stand against Khabib or stand against the best of the best, why am I afraid in my everyday life of my boss? Or why am I afraid to take this decision? So that's what I call inspiration. So it depends why you watch it and also why you participate. Do you participate because you want to test your limits in a healthy way, or you want to turn over your life and this is a healthy way to do it? Or do you want to prove things to others, to prove things to unhealthy things to yourself?
But just to go back quickly to what Dr. Peikoff said, because his thing was, if this is a bare knuckles situation into submission, that's my observation, then that's immoral. And it seems like that is what you're saying is the purpose of MMA. The goal is to get your other opponent to submit. Now, the goal of boxing, which I'm also not a big fan of, is to outsmart your opponent to score points when you're hitting his head or other. So it's there, there's that skill. MMA is explicitly about submission. And
technically you also have points. You also have points, but I know that submit sounds bad, but actually means to defeat, to put them in a position where they tap and they say, okay, you won, because if we continue in this position, I'll be in trouble. So again, I understand what you're saying. I don't like the blood. I don't like when I see people suffer. I don't like this at all. But most of the times, particularly when you see a high class, a high level event, odds are you're going to see a lot of technical stuff. You're going to see a lot of strategy. And at the end, you will see these people hugging, thanking each other for giving them the chance to measure themselves vis-a-vis someone who is very skillful. And one last thing.
Sure.
I think it's very important for people to be able to defend themselves and defend their values. Ideally, again, we'd have the police and all that stuff, but we live in times, and we've always lived in times where quite often it's not able to rely on someone else. Also, Leonard Peikoff himself, if I'm doing some appeal to authority here, but
he's talked about teaching kids jiu-jitsu and teaching them self-defense.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but
also
you're talking about sitting down, popping popcorn, and having a fun time with friends watching bare knuckle fighting.
You're right. If I said this wouldn't make sense, and this would be not what I'm saying. So, for example, I don't understand people who have no idea about martial arts and watch MMA just for the boo-boo. But I like watching it because I can recognize the strategies. I can see things. I can see things put on the test. This works, this doesn't work. And one last thing from what I was saying before. Remember that scene in Atlas Shrugged? Slight spoiler if you haven't read it, turn down the volume. Where Reardon's factory is being attacked and Francisco is there shooting it out. And Ayn Rand portrays him as something like an old cowboy or something like that. So this image of someone who can stand strong in defending his values or her values, I find something very beautiful in it. So I don't like the blood. I wouldn't participate in mixed martial arts because I have other priorities in my life. But this exhibition of skill and this exhibition of strength and technique into defending yourself, I find something appealing to it, and I don't find anything immoral.
Cobb, thank you for your contribution in your super chat. Cobb wants to know, is it rational to be an MMA fighter or boxer given the long-term head trauma? What do you think, Nikos?
That's a very good question. Notice, though, again, the majority of the trauma does not come from the games. It comes mostly also, or not mostly, but up to a part comes also from sparring, from your training. So I believe that you can take the measured risk, if this is the route that you follow in your life, that I will try to make sure that I protect myself as much as possible from this. And you can protect yourself. You can have as your strategy mostly to try to go to the ground and all that stuff. But again, I wouldn't be an MMA fighter myself. So I don't know what particular values these people that follow this path have. But I know that some people are really dedicated to this career. They find their calling in it. They approach it in a very rational way. Again, that's why I gave the example of Khabib. And this is something that I find inspirational and admirable. Again, minus the mysticism. Don't tell me that Khabib is a tribalist or whatever. When we get inspiration from someone, we focus on the good thing. We focus on the things that we can selfishly use for our own life. We don't care, or I don't care that much about the package of what are their views or whatever outside.
The only thing I know, Nikos, the only thing I know about Khabibs is that I usually get them chicken with inside a pita. I don't know much about. Oh yeah, it's kebab. Sorry, kebab. I remember Dr. Peikoff at some point was asked about actors who lose a lot of weight or gain a lot of weight for roles, and is it rational to take those types of health risks for your career? I remember him. I'm kind of thinking of it. I remember being somewhat kind of accepting of that. That, as you said, there's certain measured risks that you take. And don't quote me now. Certainly go look it up. I guess. Let me see if there's any other super chats. Bradley says MMA is a celebration of raw masculinity, physical domination. This is what stands between protecting one's family when individual rights fail. When individual rights fail, let me just say, your MMA isn't going to do jack shit. I mean, I know these people fashion.
Very questionable.
These people fashion. You think you're going to scoop up your family and start fighting your way out. I mean, you are. It's the same people who think that their little pistols, and Dr. Brooks has talked about this, their little pistols are going to take to if society goes on. It's going to do nothing. So the question is, a celebration of raw masculinity and physical domination. To me, raw masculinity is not two men in a cage fighting it out with everyone cheering. That's savagery. I look at that and say savagery. To me, raw masculinity is, guys drawing up or putting together a building or creating something, doing stock trading, making money, running something. It's not people beating the fuck out of each other. I'm sorry, Nikos. We got to bleep that now. We'll get it in post.
Okay, it's okay. So just something for our viewers that might not be very familiar. So combat sports and self-defense is not the same thing. So it would be much better, particularly in the United States where you can do it, if you also learn how to use a gun. Most important, situational awareness, how to understand a danger, to go away from a danger. And then the physical fight is only part of it. And it's in the street, other things work in the street and other things work in some sports. But that's not the point. The point is that what our friend described, which is being able to protect yourself and your values, that's why we put it, is important. And again, spoiler, down your volume if you haven't read Atlas Shrugged. How beautiful is that scene when they break into the State Science Institute to save John Galt, and Ragnar Daneskjöld flies in from the glass and breaks in like this hero that he is, and he over-muscles, quote, his opponents, because, as he said, let them find out what happened when you combine strength and power with the power of the mind. And this is what I find inspiring in all this.
Allison has been so great with her super chats, and I apologize, we're a little remiss in getting to them. She says in MMA, the fighter can protect the front of their head at any of the time they see it. A fighter can't legally hit the back of the head. All right, well, that apparently my sources are wrong in that from what I read. Allison also says, don't forget, guys, it's also the referee's job to watch out for the fighters as well in MMA.
Yes, and again, there's much to be said about MMA could offer better medical insurance to the athletes, all the stuff. we can discuss this, and this is something very valid. But again, my main point is there is nothing inherently immoral in being able to defend yourself and actually find some value in testing your skills vis-a-vis someone else within a context that you know this is not to death, that there are rules.
All right.
And you're actually both going to benefit. You're both going to win something from it, whether it's money or the skills or the knowledge or the experience.
Or the head injury, you might win that as well, or the brain damage.
That's a possibility indeed.
Do you know what we don't think, not we, but generally objectivism holds that animals have no rights, correct? That, you know, a dog doesn't have rights, so, you know, things about, I mean, Ayn Rand herself talked about animal cruelty and everything like that. So my question to you is what about a cockfight? You know what that is? A rooster fight, a cockfight.
Yeah, I find the rooster fights absolutely disgusting. The dog fights and all that stuff, absolutely disgusting. Because there you don't, like, what's the inspiration in the dog fight? First of all, there is no value, there is no concept of value for the dog itself. But this is something completely different. I don't see any parallel between, now, there could be the parallel that some sick people, sick in the mind, in a bad way, who enjoy mixed martial arts because of the bloodbath, will enjoy, of the possible bloodbath, will also enjoy the dog fight. But this has nothing to do with my experience and with why I
Nikos,
enjoy.
But the dogs are trained. They're not just random dogs. You have dog trainers who train these dogs to be vicious. So there is a skill, right? You've talked about all the skill of MMA. There's a skill, they train these dogs. We know that the dogs don't have any value. So, isn't dog fighting just an example of the raw the raw dogginess? We get to see the real dog in action.
No, because there's no value in seeing the real dog in action. But there is value in seeing someone like GSP, Georges St. Pierre, someone who started as being bullied as a kid. He overcame it through fighting. Then he became one of the, perhaps the best.
When you say value, it's value.
Let me finish. Let me finish, please. So
sure.
He became one of the best fighters in history, and also a very good role model for younger people. A role model in terms of inspiring people against bullying and inspiring people to become the best that they can. So I don't see a parallel between the two.
Well, you're saying, what's the value in dog fighting, right? There's no value in it. And no. I would, right. Well, value to whom and for what? And I could introduce you to cultures in America, cultures that included Michael Vick, the professional football player, where, especially in the South, where dog fighting and cockfighting is entertainment. It's something that you do. You got to, and I'm just saying that I certainly wouldn't think that should be illegal. I don't think MMA should be illegal either. But there's something about people who seek that out and enjoy it. Like, I don't think dog fighting should be illegal, but if you enjoy that, I'm repulsed by it. And for me, it's the same thing with MMA. It's like, it's a battle, maybe not to the death in MMA, but to the brain injury, where kind of it's I don't see the difference. I guess you do.
I do, yes. And again, it's not my favorite thing in the world. I don't like seeing people fight already from school. It's something that appalled me. But at the highest level, it's something which can be.
Let me just say, yeah. Allison is saying dogs can't give consent or have free will, and now Allison, I'm answering you because of your super chats. The dogs there is no consent for a dog. Dog doesn't have free will. We lock the dog up. The dog doesn't have any free will. We lock the dog up. The dog is property to us. So a lot of people want to get their dog together and fatten them up and have them go fight to the death. And hey, if they lose the dog, that's their game. And I just feel like MMA is the same thing. It's enjoying watching a fight. It's enjoying watching like a murderous row. And
no,
I prefer Highlight.
That's something completely different. And again, context matters. Why someone watches it. I'm sure there are people who watch it for this, but these people are of no concern to me. I'm explaining why I like watching it and why other rational people who I know enjoy watching it.
All right. Well, can we sell this one a draw for today?
Well, I believe I believe I won, as otherwise I wouldn't be here. But let's go to something that unites us, which is something which we can all agree is pro-value, which is happening soon in London. So actually, two things are happening in London, which you should see them as one, but in a way they're double the value. So we have the Ayn Rand Con Europe, the conference, the Objectivist Conference of the Ayn Rand Institute in London, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of April. Before that, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but before that, the best objectivist activist in Europe and the best objectivist club, group, center, is however you want to call it in Europe, the Ayn Rand Center UK, is organizing a whole week of events, starting from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, in London, and even outside London, with people that I don't know if Razi allows us to tell you who these people are, but with a lot of events, and with events that in a way, they're not only philosophy, they're not only politics, they're about personal development, they're about personal relations. Whatever you want, you will be covered. So keep an eye on the Ayn Rand Con Europe, but also on the social media of the Ayn Rand Center UK on things that will be the build-up towards the conference. And a word of advice, definitely consider becoming a member if you're not already a member, because as a member, you will have free access, to my knowledge, to almost all of the things that are the build-up to the Ayn Rand Con. And for Ayn Rand Con itself, consider registering. I'm sure there's going to be links in the description or in our programs. Register, and if you're a young person, apply for a scholarship. Particularly if you're outside the UK, it's definitely worth applying for a scholarship. This is the objectivist event of the last 2 years in Europe, and you don't want to miss it. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be there. Many of the people you see in this channel are going to be there, and it's definitely worth the investment of your time.
And Nikos, I'll just echo what you're saying about the ability to get access to you. I mean, I think most of us on both sides of the pond feel like our educations were lacking, certainly when it comes to philosophy. So to have access to you, to Don Watkins, to Harry Binswanger, to really some of, if not the most intelligent and well-read objectivists in the world, is awesome for our UK members and subscribers and subscribers around the world. Like Ram, who says that brain injury is not the goal of MMA, it's a risk. Okay. And
it's not that usual. And it's also something that you see, for example, in professional, quote, football, as you call it in the US, or in rugby in the UK. And again, it sucks, but you don't go there for it, obviously. And it's not as usual as so it's not a suicide mission if you go there. You can still go there, and particularly if you train in a particular way, you can be confident that this is something that is not going to happen to me, particularly again for people who, but anyway, I'm not an expert in brain injury, so I don't want to enter that field.
Tame Master says there's no skill or artistry in dogfighting, and there are no safety measures. Well, I mean, I could play devil's advocate and say you've got to train the dog, right? You've got to fatten the dog. Maybe you hang a carcass and tell the dog, go at it this way or go at it that way. I don't know. You train dogs to do a lot of shit. I'm sure they train dogs to fight. So I think
it's so repulsive to me that I don't know. So I've never watched one. I don't know what is behind it. So, but I wouldn't see any parallel between this and a fair fight among consenting individuals. But anyway, that's the type of value you get from ARC, you gain from the Daily Objective. This type of discussions, where else would you find them? So consider again supporting, becoming a member, spreading the word, and keep coming back to our shows and keep appreciating what we're doing. We appreciate definitely your support.
Absolutely. And Nikos, I'll quickly say as we close out here, it's so fun. As we say, as objectivists, we can always disagree respectfully on concretes and preferences. And, people say, oh, objectivists are all these mindless automatons that all agree. They all say the same thing. It's so untrue. I mean, all these discussions we have really different perspectives on, but the discussion is always fruitful and spirited and intelligent and respectful. So we'll keep it going.
It is indeed. So I'm not sure what's happening next. It's Wednesday, so there's the day of the live meetup in London. I can't do Clubhouse today, so I will say goodbye after the daily objective. And again, if you're subscribers, you'll see what's coming up. And Jonathan, any parting words?
Only support what we're doing, and thank you for being here. We'll see you tomorrow for more of the Daily Objective. Au revoir.
Au revoir.